You know, every day we read these polls. Is Kamala Harris winning? Is Donald Trump winning? What do people think of the country? But I have a special guest with me today, James Klug, to help me go through what Americans on both sides are really thinking about the political landscape and about the United States of America. James, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, Steven, thank you for having me on the channel. I'm really happy to be here.
So, just some background on James. If you've ever seen those videos where someone goes around with a microphone and asks people questions on their political views or to defend their political views or what they think, that is James right there. He's got 547,000 subscribers on YouTube. I wanted to just start off by getting your thoughts. I know you're in Southern California, which is actually a little bit different than most of California, because with Orange County, you have a large segment of that county that actually likes Donald Trump. You then go to like San Francisco, and they might not like him at all. But what are Americans thinking as you interview people around the country and in California, specifically about Donald Trump and maybe specifically about Kamala Harris?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And it's kind of funny, when it comes to the polls, they're obviously all over the place. Some can be somewhat accurate, some can be all over the place. And one funny thing is when you talk to people all over the country, you do actually get sort of an idea of who is in favor of what candidate. That's one of the really interesting things. And, let's say for California, for example, you're going to get a lot of working class Americans that are behind Donald Trump. They're totally on board with him. And this goes for, let's say I'm at Huntington Beach. It's much more conservative, like you mentioned, in Orange County, or even in Orange County, a very liberal, more wealthy, very kind of elite area would be Laguna Beach. And you can see it when it comes to what the campaigns are going after, right? So you'll have the Kamala Harris's campaign going after women, and particularly older women, some younger women, but mainly women. And that's going to be really standing out when you're talking to people. But I guess it's kind of all over the place when it comes to support, but you do notice many trends. Men tend to 100% lean. I mean, this goes without saying, right? Men tend to lean towards Donald Trump. But something interesting is Gen Z, for example, they're incredibly difficult to poll. But when I'm out on the street, right now I'm in Philadelphia, so I'm filming in Philadelphia. If I'm talking to young men, it doesn't matter, black, Hispanic, white, they're going to be very excited about Donald Trump's energy and his his entrepreneurial spirit. Whereas many women, they'll kind of be sold a little bit more on Kamala, but primarily because she is a woman. That's a big factor. And some people will be able to express kind of why they believe that that's important, right? It's symbolism, whatever it may be. But as of right now, many people can't express why they support Kamala Harris. They can't express, they can't really explain the accomplishments that she's had as vice president. We mentioned the borders are to people or whatever it may be. You've seen, obviously, the media trying to brush that off. But it's a lot just having to do with kind of the vibes and her being a woman. That is going to be leading a lot of support behind Kamala Harris. And some people, the people that kind of just will blindly believe the media or whatever it may be, they kind of just fall in line with that. But if people are asking questions, is my dollar going further right now? How effective was this current administration? And do I want change? A lot of times these people, they tend to be like working class, where these gas prices or groceries largely affect them. They're wildly unhappy right now. And so, you hear this a lot from the media, and it's kind of a vibes election. And the only reason why it's a vibes election right now is because Kamala is largely, or 100%, my bad, avoiding interviews to dig into her flip-flops, but also just her proposed policy platform that she has right now, which she has none. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to show, hey, this lady's really cool. We have TikTok dances. She brings in celebrities. But Donald Trump also has this as well. So if we're going to play the vibes game, we'll table policy, right? Because there are still a lot of people that are apolitical. If you table policy, you talk about vibes. I hear a lot from those people, that maybe a little bit more uninformed voters. But again, usually there's a pretty good gender split. But men will talk about the assassination attempt. They'll talk about how he's a tough leader and he could do long rallies and he's strong on foreign policy and people respect him and he's a businessman and all these things. So, Donald Trump is actually playing with a lot right now in his favor, even if we're not even talking about policy. It's really interesting. And I think the main thing for the viewers is there's a major split among the genders in the country right now. Trump's administration, they're pretty clearly going after, let's say for Gen Z, young men. Kamala Harris, young women. So it's the main takeaway, I would say.
Yeah, well, that's
long rant.
Very interesting. Yeah, I noticed one of the videos you did was about the Trump assassination attempt. I was flabbergasted, for lack of a better word, by how many people said to you that they believed that Donald Trump had set that up in order to get the sympathy vote, that he had allowed someone to take a shot at his face in order to get more votes. What were the mixed messages that you got? And were you also shocked that there's literally people that believe, more than like the FBI or the Secret Service allowed this, that Donald Trump himself set up an assassination attempt and let somebody take 8 shots at his face? Like, what were people's reactions?
Yeah, I mean, in California, I was in Huntington Beach at that time. You have a pretty good mix at the pier of liberals and Republicans, or Democrats and Republicans. But let's just focus on the crazies, okay? So there are the crazies that are saying that Donald Trump did this, or they're saying, oh, well, I wish he didn't miss. And I will tell you, okay, I'll be totally honest. There's a part of me that's not surprised, of course, right? I talk to people all the time, but a part of me actually was. And the reason I say that is because at that point, this became real, right? This assassination attempt was real. And let's say if somebody said something gross like that before, it doesn't really stick as hard. You're kind of like, it's still a bad thing to say on camera, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't quite stick as much as it actually being a real situation and you still having that view. And the fact that people were saying that on camera, Stephen, is shocking enough. You're watching that, mouth drop to the ground. But let's talk about really quick, what you were asking is people building this blue and on conspiracy that Donald Trump set it up, right? The bullet, I guess the guy's just a wizard with his bullet and it grazed his ear and somebody actually died. But hey, don't worry, Donald Trump set it up. Now, the logic there is pretty clear, right? How the last 8 years we have been hearing that Donald Trump is literally Hitler, okay? So these people believe that Donald Trump's literally Hitler, and either, if you are saying, if you were one of those people that were saying that, and you said, oh, it's terrible that he was almost assassinated, well, okay, so one of those two things is a lie, right? Because why would you say that about literally Hitler? It doesn't make any sense, okay? So this is where people go into this, well, they either double down, they say, I wish the shooter didn't miss, which I got. Or there's the other avenue where if you don't really want to say that and you believe that Donald Trump's literally Hitler and you don't want to say, you don't want to say that, the other thing that I was talking about, if you don't want to go that route, then you jump to, well, okay, so you don't need to say it was wrong. You don't need to say it's good. You can jump to this option, this third option, which is it was just made up. I had one guy that told me that, when I brought up the blood in the hand and the blood all over his face, he said, no, when Secret Service took him down, right, they applied the fake blood on his ear. That's what it was. The Secret Service was in on it too. So that really explains kind of the logic there is they believe that he's literally Hitler and they don't really want to say that it was a bad thing. And so let's just go to this thing because, then we don't need to do any of those other options and we can just blame it on Trump because, he's just a really bad guy and he would fake an assassination attempt and he would even, the whole thing's really confusing. He would use real bullets that get somebody else killed, But the real confusing part about the whole argument is that you have Donald Trump, who was up in the polls, right? Trump was doing incredibly well. He was destroying Joe Biden. And so this argument of, oh, it was going to help him in the polls, it wasn't even close. I thought he didn't need a boost in the polls. So the incentive isn't even there, So the whole thing's just all over the place. That video was really shocking. I encourage people to check it out if they haven't seen it. Because, when we go out there, we show the American people how the day was, right? Yeah. So you have a lot of people that are very level-headed and then a lot of people that are absolutely off the rails.
Yeah. I had people in my own life that were like, I was sick to my stomach. I had other people say it's all made up. I had other people say, I'm so sad that they missed. Like I couldn't believe what the American people were saying to me. And I was sitting there as a journalist going, oh my gosh, thank goodness I didn't have to report on somebody's brains being blown out in 4K on live TV. Like, I just, like, my reaction was like, I was just sick about it. And I thought, okay, would I have applied that same to Joe Biden? And it's like, I don't like Joe Biden. I'm pretty clear that I don't like Joe Biden, but I don't want him assassinated. I don't want him bodily injured. I just want him to actually run the country or get the hell out of the way so that somebody competent can. But yeah, the reactions were so mixed that I just was a little bit blown away. What, as you interview people, what are their thoughts on the border invasion? Because I've seen interviews out there where people are like, we're not being invaded. There's no increase in illegals. The illegals aren't tied to high inflation. The government's not giving away my money to illegals. And you know, so I see the other side of what I believe is true. What are you seeing out there as far as illegal immigration and this invasion on the southern border?
Oh, it's such a big topic. I guess we'll talk about the crazies for a quick second, because really, when it comes to a lot of folks on the left, you know, I did a video where I showed people CBP figures, you know, Customs and Border Protection, showed them the exact figures, and we're not even talking about people that were flown into the United States using like a CBP One app. We're not talking about like visa overstays. We're not talking about a bunch of stuff. We're just talking about simply apprehensions down at the southern border. Oh, we're not even talking about gotaways. So people that get away from Border Patrol, right? So I was just showing them that. And I was showing them the difference between Donald Trump's administration and Joe Biden's administration. And, you know, as you can imagine, the numbers are unbelievable. And really, my only purpose for the video was to ask people what changed right here. And a very common response that I got was, that number's not real. And so you at that point, you just say, okay, well, that's fine. Would you like me to pull it up on their website? I'll show you, you know, because you want to like actually try to get them to check it out, I guess. Right. But you end up with a bunch of people running away. Now, I didn't go around just hunting those people down. No, that was a very common argument, is it's not happening. But this is where a lot of these arguments, and you hear a lot of people talking about just the Harris campaign being fake and all this, is a lot of these arguments from the left, unfortunately today, a lot of them are so unbelievably fake, because what you do get is it's not happening. And then if you do happen to explain that it is happening, and you explain the effects and whatnot, they'll say it's not happening. And then they'll jump to but if it was, it's a good thing. So, oh, it is happening. Okay, never mind. Well, it's a good thing. And here, I'll tell you why, because you need 10 million illegal immigrants for, I guess, minimum wage work. It's like, I don't even know why they have to be illegals. What you know, the argument doesn't make any sense, but it doesn't matter. A lot of people really don't want to criticize their team. And so they'll double, triple down. Now, on the other end, I'll move over to people that can be persuaded. These are the radicals, the people that are the activists, and it's like trying to nail Jello to a wall with them. But you also have the people that are more apolitical, go along with the trends, and it just so happens that every American institution, whether it be as well as Hollywood, you know, TV shows that they're watching, news that they're watching, it's all left-wing slant. And so that tends to take advantage of those people, or capitalize. You know, they tend to capitalize on those people that are low information voters, maybe apolitical, maybe they just go along with what their friends are doing. But those people can be convinced. And, you know, I just did a video the other day in Philadelphia, actually, where I was explaining to people, giving them examples of the effects of illegal immigration and this worst border crisis in American history that we've experienced under this administration. And, you know, if you actually show them the effects of what this is doing to communities, I was giving Chicago as an example, where, you know, these are struggling communities and they're having to shift resources because 100,000 illegal immigrants came to their city. How is that fair to those American communities? And so if you put it, if you give people, those people, right, if you give those kind of apolitical people those examples, oftentimes they can actually process, because again, they're not partisan hacks. They're not trying to defend their team. They'll actually process that information. And we had a lot of people processing that information and saying, you know what? Yeah, I think we actually should be putting our communities first. And so that's a really interesting kind of dynamic between those two, the activist versus the person that's just the average, maybe apolitical American that's just has a normal job, isn't that political. There's a pretty shocking difference between those two. And then, of course, the people that are being directly affected by this. You tend to have people that are already voting Republican, or people at the southern border, or people in a community that illegal immigration is affecting. They already get it. They're already on board. They're totally sold. And it really just comes down to who is who's wanting to know the truth. Who wants to know the truth about the after effects of illegal immigration, whether it be the 112,000 fentanyl deaths per year, record-breaking illegal crime, all sorts of stuff, right? So it's the people that actually understand the truth. It's just night and day. They understand it. They're already on board. It's really a war of kind of going after that person that's fairly apolitical and trying to educate them and showing them just how evil opening up the southern border is to everyone. Unvetted mass illegal immigration, and they can be easily convinced. It's really it's quite interesting.
Yeah. I read a study last week where they asked people to shift their news source to CNN for 90 days. And before they even reached the 90 days, they had shifted politically to the Democrat Party in their mind. And so just that constant everyday gaslighting, telling you that everything's okay, that this is good. By the time almost 90 days go by, people are going, you know what? We do need a bunch of illegal immigrants and we should let them vote, and kicking them out, that would be crazy. Biden's doing everything he can to stop fentanyl. Of course, we have to support Ukraine with American taxpayer money. We can ignore veterans in order to give illegals luxury apartments.
It's false sympathy. It's false sympathy. They have sympathy for all these other people except for the American people.
Well, it's this idea of they're like playing on kindness, right? Like it's the kind thing to do, but it's not kind to kick an 8th generation Black American out of Chicago in place of someone from Venezuela that just arrived 5 days ago. And so anyway, I wanted to, give you that context, because as you speak with some of these people, would you say that the number one way that people are developing their opinions is the mainstream media?
Yeah, I mean, it's okay. So what's really interesting about this is I've touched on this briefly. We do have, by the time you're 3 years old, right? You're growing up and you have liberal leaning TV shows, you have liberal leaning movies, you have liberal leaning high school that you go to. You go to college, oh, it's also left leaning. I shouldn't even use the word liberal. I don't even know how it's left leaning. And then when it comes to the news, right? Obvious slant there. The default character coming out of all of that is just a left-leaning person. That's what it is, right? You only start to actually become more right-leaning. Let's say, well, maybe you have a family, but also if you're actually consuming the other content that's debunking or at least talking about a lot of these issues. The gaslighting that I've seen the last few years is unbelievable, that we've all seen. It's unbelievable, right? They'll essentially, we've had the worst border crisis in American history, and they'll say everything's totally great. The Biden administration will be suing Texas to stop them from closing down their border, and then at the same time they'll say, "Oh no, we're really tough on we're really tough on the border. Don't worry, we're not suing them to stop them from doing that." So yeah, essentially all of that. You watch CNN, you watch a lot of these outlets, and they either don't talk about these issues or they just completely lie about it. And that's really what props up Kamala Harris and Joe Biden the last 3 years is. Anybody with a brain that's actually capable of critical thinking. And that's really what they do. They try to get you to turn off that part of your brain, the part of your brain that allows you to kind of think critically. They want you to turn that off, because if you are maybe thinking, hey, Joe Biden seems senile, I don't actually think he's in charge. You watch CNN, they say, no. Well, here's somebody that works with Joe Biden, and he is one of the sharpest, brightest people, and he's very intense. What did Mayorkas say? Very intense and detail oriented in his meetings. And so you watch that and you say, oh, maybe that's okay, right? And then they completely ignore everything else that's going on. So, I mean, at this point, these people wouldn't get anywhere close to the positions that they're at if the media was even 50-50 balanced, even 60-40. Right now, it's so slanted that they have this massive shield to protect them from all of the failures. And it does really affect the American people. Something interesting, actually. When Joe Biden was forced out, Kamala Harris jumped in, wildly unpopular VP, wildly unpopular presidential candidate in 2020. And, when she jumped in, what you saw, I did a video the next day, and I was like, well, I don't know. I mean, 24 hours for the propaganda machine to do its magic and work its magic on Democrats. Are they really going to shift right away? We went out and filmed the next day, and every single Democrat we saw was so excited about Kamala Harris. They were so ready, when just a couple days ago, they were telling me that Joe Biden's never been more ready to run for re-election in his life. And they don't care that he was forced out. They don't care that they didn't really like Kamala Harris the last 3.5 years, 4 years. If the media is telling them that's what they're doing, then they're going to be excited about her. And, that's gotten worse over the last few years. That has gotten worse. A few years ago, you might have a mainstream story from the corporate media. It might take a few days for those arguments and those positions to kind of transfer on to their Democratic base. Now it's like the memes that you see. It's automatic. It's really it's shocking. It's horrifying, and it's a party that's so, I guess, gullible when it comes to the corporate media. They will literally just believe anything. In 2020, you saw this kind of radical shift of this disobedient, right, where they didn't want to be controlled. And then on the other hand, you saw the people that were the hardcore, put on your mask, get a million shots, and obey everything. And you saw radical obedience on one side of the aisle, and then disobedience on the other side. And that radical obedience has, in my view, because I was doing this before 2020, street videos, has been getting worse and worse and worse. They're just, they'll believe just about anything as long as it comes from, the president of the United States or the corporate media or whatever it may be. And they really won't ask many questions. It's pretty extreme. It's gotten a lot worse over the years.
Yeah. Well, it never looks good when Dr. Fauci with 6 booster shots gets COVID for the 3rd time. But what do I know? I'm just a guy on the internet, right? Have you guys, have you ever brought up the topic or the question of what people think about allowing illegal immigrants to vote in American elections? And if so, what kind of response did you see?
Yes, I have. And for that video, we kind of broke it down into a couple categories. Hey, would you have a problem with them voting in local elections, federal elections, which is unconstitutional? But I just I asked the question generally, and then I dug into the specifics after. And so when it comes to the general question, you have a lot of conservatives. They're probably pretty predictable. Hell no. What are you talking about? You can't just go fly to another country and vote, in their elections. It's not how things work. You don't have a sovereign country at that point. But I did find probably maybe 30% of Democrats, probably 50% that were okay with illegal immigrants voting in local elections. And then maybe another, maybe 20% or so that just didn't care at all. Even if it was allowed to vote in a federal election, they would have absolutely no problem with it. And the interesting part is that they actually do affect federal elections without doing anything when it comes to the census actually counting illegal immigrants. So you'll have the census dictates how many representatives a state has. And so if you have millions, let's say California, you might have millions of illegals. We have no clue. It's probably millions. that directly affects how many representatives the state has. So it's already affecting federal elections in that sense. But when it comes to the responses from Democrats, yeah, a lot are completely gung-ho, certainly gung-ho about the local elections, because there is that debate happening in the United States right now. And that's really what inspired that video for me when I did that is, you know, you have cities that are fighting for either, and it gets a little bit complicated, but either undocumented immigrants to be allowed to vote, and then some are pushing for illegal immigrants to be allowed to vote. So it's kind of all over the place. But ultimately, if you understand how they operate, which I think many of your viewers do, how these people operate is it's inch by inch by inch. You know, they take it in steps. So they'll say, okay, no illegals can vote right now, but we'll push for undocumented. New York City, the biggest city in the United States, was pushing for this, right? And then the next step is, okay, well, how about just school board elections? Illegals can vote in those. And then they just take a little bit more and a little bit more. And there's a handful of cities in the United States that do allow illegals to vote right now. And yeah, unfortunately, a lot of people, they don't understand the consequences of that. They don't understand that's probably why, you know, that's probably why Biden administration allowed in 10 million illegals. Like this, there's probably a plan here, but a lot of these people, they don't, I don't know if they just don't piece that together or they simply just don't care, but they certainly don't care enough to where they don't care if many don't care if illegal immigrants vote in elections in the United States, which I think if you ask somebody that 10 years ago, 99% of people would say, what on earth are you talking about? Right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I still feel that way. Maybe
I do too. I do. Like, no, Steven, I do too. I mean, and I do this stuff and I'm still thinking to myself, what's going on?
Like, you know? I don't want someone from a socialist country dictating how my conservative Utah is going to live. Just like I don't want someone from the WHO that's mostly funded by Bill Gates and China deciding if I need to wear a mask or get 6 boosters or what. Like, I'm a human with a brain. I'll make my own decisions. I am an American. I believe in freedom of speech, you know, so, you know, having outside groups dictate to me how to behave, I you know, that's the libertarian in me, I guess. In our final few minutes together, James, as you've gone around the country, what are the main concerns of the American people? I mean, I would, without even guessing, I would say kitchen table issues, but like what, as you talk to people, maybe what are some of the top ones that just come out over and over again?
Oh, geez. I mean, among Kamala Harris supporters right now, you're going to have kind of essentially, I mean, really the only thing that they'll bring up, if they do bring up any policy that they're excited, you know, about when it comes to Kamala Harris, would be abortion, bottom line, right? And the Democrats' messaging on that has been incredibly effective on women. Obviously, that's who they've been targeting. And, you know, it's funny. I actually just had, I'll jump on the other topics here in a sec, but I did want to tell you, you know, I was just talking to a lady today, and, you know, as we know, the Roe v. Wade struck down, goes back to the states. And so the really interesting argument there is, okay, so you're really excited about abortion. So are you telling me that you do not want people in their own states to vote for an abortion policy in their own state? Like you don't want them to be allowed to vote for that. Is that correct? Like, are you trying to take away that vote? And when you ask that, you know, it really stumps a lot of people because they don't see it as them taking away this very kind of, I guess, right, democratic process, right? They're the party of democracy. And at that point, they're no. The federal government should only handle it. And, you know, there goes the democratic process there. But that is a massive one. It's very effective on young women. It's very effective on women in general. And then as for, I will say the rest of the arguments for Kamala Harris at this point, incredibly shallow. She's a woman. She's Black, Indian, and like, that's it, right? And so when it comes to the other issues that are affecting the American people, inflation is massive. The border and how the Biden administration handled it is massive. How Kamala Harris, the border czar, handled it. These are huge failures. And these will probably be the main things is, you know, did your dollar get you further while Donald Trump was in office? Did you feel more secure in the nation when it comes to safety? It's another big one as well. But, you know, affecting people's pocketbooks, it's always going to be a negative. It was a huge negative for Donald Trump in 2020 when the Democrats shut down the economy. That's why Donald Trump was on Twitter, open up the economy, open up the schools. And that hurt the American people the most. I actually don't think, his support would have been even much higher if they opened that up, just because, you start affecting somebody's pocketbook and they start to get really, really uncomfortable, really upset, and they want change. So yeah, economy, World War III looming. People kind of forget about it. So I would bring it up, but people kind of forget about it because it's just kind of, it's not here right now. What's here right now that's affecting them is their pocketbooks. The border crisis is a big one in places all over the country. And then on the left, abortion. And that's pretty much what it's come down to for me that I hear on the street. I know a lot of people bring up a bunch of other issues, and there's a ton of issues, but those would be probably the three primary ones, with the fourth being World War III looming.
Yeah, it's just kind of there. Yeah,
it's kind of there. It might be our demise, but it's over there.
Yeah, like it's just nuclear weapons, nothing big.
It's just that. Yeah. No,
yeah. I read earlier this year that 30% of Democrats openly say the only reason they vote in the presidential election is to keep abortion access for women.
Right.
It's the only issue that they care about.
We got to wipe out those babies.
Yeah. So that swings a lot of people in that direction of the Democrat Party. But I agree. I had former Trump advisor Steve Cortez on, and he said the two I's are the big killer right now: immigration and inflation, with inflation being the number one thing. And he said, if you can tie immigration back into inflation, which you 100% can, totally. The government is giving hundreds of billions of dollars of our money to people that aren't working. And then we are now competing with our working dollar for their free dollar on the same good. Everything gets more expensive. And so that inflation and illegal immigration, those are huge. But I appreciate you bringing up that abortion thing, because I don't think a lot of people realize that. Like, literally, if abortion was off the table, 30% of people would go, you know what? I'm just not going to get involved in politics. I'm not going to go out and vote. So they really do. They have this grip on the American people with your body, your choice.
Not for vaccines, though.
Yeah, not for vaccines.
Right.
That one, God only invented these arms for the flu shot and COVID, right?
That's right.
So anyway, I wanted to bring you on because I wanted my audience to get a flavor for what people are thinking, right? Like, I don't want people to be in an echo chamber on my channel thinking nobody thinks like this, like, yes, they do. There are people out there, large swaths of the population, that have thoughts that are completely counter to a conservative or a libertarian or an independent. Yep. And it's interesting. You got to know those, because how can you educate people on them or help them understand it or question their thinking on it if you don't even know what the problem is?
Totally. And that is one thing that I try to highlight in my videos, is the other side as well, right? It doesn't do my audience any good if I'm showing them some shallow random argument and not actually like showing what people are saying to me on the street. I do try to highlight that stuff. People that watch my videos, they know, I see it a lot of times in the comments. Oh my gosh, James, I could barely make it through this video. It's so brutal, but it's helpful to understand kind of what those issues are when it comes to just the American people in general, but also, what the left is saying, because a lot of it is fake momentum when it comes to Kamala Harris. That stuff turns into real momentum and real excitement. And it's helpful for a lot of people to understand those arguments and how they can potentially, hey, I have a friend that's leaning in this direction. What can I say to effectively get them thinking, maybe get them to change their mind, So those are really important things to know, is what they're saying and how you can address it, right?
Yeah, no, I think if there's any takeaway that I just got, it was what you just said. We have to be careful, because that fake momentum can turn into real momentum. That's my worry right now. Like, the Harris campaign was just busted faking positive titles
Right.
with credible, like Wall Street Journal, ABC News, CNN, and then down below sponsored post, right? Like they're faking it. They're spending their way into credibility.
Right.
But that fake momentum, if not called out, can become real momentum because most people don't see sponsored down below and they assume, oh, wow, look at the good things that she's doing. Oh, wow, look how many people really like her. Oh, wow, this isn't a honeymoon bump. She's actually growing and going. I think that is a really great point that you just brought up.
Yeah, it's really, you know, we don't even need the Kamala Harris example as the fake momentum turning into real momentum. Look no further than Joe Biden. They got this corpse almost across the finish line. And, you know, all 3 years, everyone's saying, you guys, this guy's he's not even sentient. He doesn't know where he is or what's going on. And if you gaslight the American people just enough, perhaps a good chunk of them can believe those lies. Unfortunately for them, that whole thing blew up with the debate, you know?
Yeah. Which now looking back on it, I think he might have been pushed to do that so that they could push him out. I think
100%.
You know, like they did not give him the Kool-Aid, right? We know at the State of the Union, he was jacked up on something, right?
For sure.
And everyone was waiting for that. And then they didn't jack him up and he went out there and he just flopped.
For sure. And it was earlier than it should have been as well. So that's another giveaway that there was something going on there.
Yep. This was a total coup, you know, but this isn't the first time the Obamas have done a coup. So look no further than Ukraine. All right. Hey, I appreciate you coming on. Tell us your YouTube channel, and then I will put a direct link so that people can go follow you.
Absolutely. Steven, I appreciate you having me on. You guys, if you want to check out my YouTube channel, it is youtube.com/James Klug. Please consider subscribing. Thank you, guys.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much for coming on. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Steven.